the end of school politics as usual.
Yes.
Because our situation out in Cleburne, and I'll let you go into it, sort of sets the stage for a conversation you and I were having before the show.
Yeah, so we mentioned this in passing about a week ago, that Cleburne is currently looking for a head coach. Cleburne is looking for a head coach after Jeff Murkett resigned after five seasons. 5 seasons. Overall, pretty decent. Pretty decent. He went 27-25, 2 playoff appearances for Cleburne. Nothing to turn your nose up at. So, Jeff Murkett, but look, coaches resign, coaches move on.
Yep.
These things happen.
Yeah.
We got a whole website about it, TexasFootball.com/coach changes.
Yep.
But it's the way and the reasoning that behind Jeff Murkett's resignation that is really kind of raising eyebrows.
Yeah.
This started, he resigned on March 8th, and he did so asking to, basically saying that
Hostile workplace.
a hostile work environment had been the talk of the town for weeks. He has been on administrative leave with pay, according to Cleburne ISD. This is from WFAA. So this is very interesting, but there's a number of things that are going on. First of all, he spoke out again this past weekend, and essentially, I believe he claimed, and I want to pull this up. I want to make sure that I have
quote him accurately.
Yeah, quote him accurately. So, first of all, there are now records showing, this is from the Cleburne Times Review, that Cleburne asked Murkett to resign in January.
Right.
But basically, he said that athletic director Mark Walker, this is quoting from his resignation letter, and human resources director Kyle Bowles, along with Dr. Kyle Heath, their superintendent, have used such malicious tactics as bullying, harassment, and retaliation, and have threatened poor evaluations and non-renewal if I did not comply with their schemes, according to the letter. Quote, I have received nothing but good reviews since I have worked for CISD. These actions are in direct correlation to my knowledge and support of Pam Lee and her $1 million lawsuit against CISD. Now, you may be wondering, okay, well, who's Pam Lee? Pam Lee is the former athletic director of Cleburne ISD, who has a lawsuit currently against Cleburne ISD claiming discrimination and retaliation she alleges played a role in her demotion to the position of CISD health and physical education specialist. So what's interesting is I don't believe that Cleburne has actually accepted the resignation. Now that seems like a minor thing, but he's currently, they subsequently placed Murkett on administrative leave. The January 23rd voluntary settlement agreement offered Murkett does not delve into the reasons the district wished for him to resign. So the district asked him to resign, which would seem to kind of, go along with what Jeff Murkett is saying is the reason.
Right.
Now, he did come out and speak some more this weekend, broke his silence for the first time since turning in a controversial resignation letter. There were 2 days of student protests at the school. There's a lot going on. So this gets into a bigger conversation. We can dive more and more into the Cleburne situation. But this dives more and more into something that is becoming, I think, in this age of social media, is becoming interesting, which is the politics of Texas high school football coaches.
Right.
And
the boards over them.
Over them. We saw this a couple of years ago with Lee Fedora in Navasota.
Yeah.
Lee Fedora had just led Navasota to a title. They came up short.
Unprecedented success.
Yeah, exactly. Unprecedented success. And then all of a sudden, he's out.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, well, what's going on? Well, we're now learning that there were kind of rumblings and ripples and a rift, if you will, between the Navasota school board and Lee Fedora. So that even though he's a great football coach, there was some sort of issue between those two that led to a separation. The same thing's happening here with Jeff Murkett at Cleburne. And what I think is really interesting is that in the age of social media and in the age of guys like Matt Stepp, DCTF High School Football Insider.
Can't keep this quiet.
This has been going on forever.
Yeah.
Okay? Since Texas high school football first existed, these politics have been a part of the game.
Every community.
Community.
Everywhere.
There's always people who don't like the coach. There's always people who think that he's they don't like him personally. They don't like the way he coaches. They don't like his play calling.
He pushes too hard. He's a dictator. He doesn't push hard enough.
Right.
Whatever it is.
Exactly. That coaches are always dealing with that. I'll give you a perfect example, and I'll leave the names out of it. This was, I want to say, in October or November, I got a call from a Texas high school football coach. And he called me, and he said, "Hey, I know that you do stuff for Fox Sports Southwest." I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, on the app, the Fox Football Friday app, they have a message board.
Right.
And on this message board, there was a guy who was running this coach down.
Yeah.
Who was saying what an idiot he is and blah, 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 blah. And he asked me if there's anything I can do as far as getting that guy removed. Yeah. Now, I don't know how it ended up moving on because I passed that up the food chain, but
it just shows
that there is the politics that's always going on. And you hear about it from the Friday Night Lights idea of everybody meeting in the diner. But now, after on Saturday morning to discuss Friday's game, now that is becoming more public. That is no longer the whispers, they are the shouts.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting from both sides, both coaches and the boards themselves, the people who want to remove one side or the other. I think there is this idea that you can use these political machinations that have been used for a half century to make one move or another and sort of quietly push someone out. It doesn't work that well. I think the thing that we're finding out is these situations are much more public.
Yeah.
Much more public than they would have been 5, 10, 15 years ago. Maybe you talk about it in the town, but when something happens in Cleburne, when something happens in Navasota, and we're talking about it here, they're talking about it in Houston, they're talking about it in Austin and San Antonio. That's a lot different than it was 20 years ago. Right. It was just in the local paper. Everyone in that community felt like they were a part of the conversation. Well, now the state is a part of the conversation, and it makes the situation a lot more complicated.
The other thing about it, and one thing I think is very interesting, and I've spoken with Jeff Merkett once, and he was perfectly nice. I can't claim to know the man, right? So I'm not going to try to take a side on this. I will say, though, that I feel like when it comes to these situations, the coaches are usually going to end up being the sympathetic figures. Usually.
Yeah,
Now,
there are exceptions.
There are exceptions where it's very clear that the coach did something wrong.
Right.
It does not appear to me that Jeff Merkett did anything wrong here.
Right. Things could change.
We could find out more, but it does not appear to that. And so I think in a lot of ways what you are finding is that coaches are not afraid to use that megaphone and say, hey, here's what's going on. I've done my job. And it would be, I hate to put it on this, but it would be very different if Jeff Merkett were 1-49 as a head coach. Right. Let's not pretend that winning and losing doesn't play into this. For sure. Okay? That he'd be a lot more that they would, if he was not a good coach and they weren't a decent football team. Right. I very much doubt that you would be seeing the kind of protests that you're seeing at Cleburne High School.
And the other thing that the social media aspect of all of this changes is 30 years ago, everyone in town knows about what's going on. But you could call a coach 3 hours away and ask him to come interview, and he'd still interview. Well, according to Step, and I don't know if you've heard it from coaches, people don't want to go near this job because of what's going on with it. There are coaches that are just saying, nah, I'm not. That would have been a job I was interested in, but now that I'm hearing this, I'm not going over there.
You get a reputation, and that's another part of it.
That's another big thing that's changed.
Is that if you go in, like if you're going to if you want to go to Max High School, but you find out that Max High School has fired the last two guys, for no particular reason, or they haven't treated them well. Well, coaches talk to one another, and now they have more means of communication.
Easier than ever for them to talk to
each other. And so you find out that Max High School is not a place you want to go. Right. And then all of a sudden, that affects the ultimate product. So it's an interesting dynamic now, and we're going to follow this Jeff Merkett story in Cleburne more, as things develop. But it's something to always keep an eye on. That when you are rolling through TexasFootball.com/coach changes, it's not always that sometimes we talk about how these coaches are a lot like their job is in many respects a lot like yours, that they may be going for more money,
right,
or they may be going because the job is closer to their family, or
right,
maybe they want to leave. But let's also remember that it's a lot like our job, everyone else's job, in that office politics is a thing.
Yeah.
And that's something that maybe is bubbling beneath the surface, but more and more we're finding out about.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's the thing. You have to understand that these are guys just like you and me who are making decisions, and they're going to be for the same reasons. And I think it's, the other interesting thing about it is,
here we go.
No. The Cleburne doesn't look good right now.
Correct.
These people that he's spoken out against do not look well right now. It's entirely possible, though, that even though this isn't being handled the best way, they could be doing the right thing for the school.
They could.
It's entirely possible. They may have a plan in place. They may have an idea of where they want to go, and people are getting in the way, and they feel like this is the only way to do it. And in 3 years, maybe Cleburne will be in better shape than we ever could have dreamed, and they could say, "I told you so."
Right.
It's
That's
entirely
possible.
It doesn't look that way right now,
Correct.
but it's entirely possible.
Right. I think that it's important to maintain a long view on these things. That said, right now, ultimately, this is a net negative in my view for for
this
Cleburne.
is never anything any coach or school wants to get out this publicly.
You're exactly right. But now, more and more, these things are becoming public.
Yeah.